Judge, I don't believe he's here yet.
Okay.
Your Honor, I also have a Gilmore matter. It's not a calendar call. It's a sentencing on page 11, if we could go forward with that.
State of Nevada versus Philip Gilmore, C2 44542. This is a date and time set for entry of judgment and imposition of sentencing. Sir, is there any legal cause or reason why judgment should not be pronounced against you at this time? Any reason why we should not proceed with sentencing, sir? By virtue of your pleas entered in this matter, I hereby adjudicate you guilty of count 1, pandering, and count 2, living from the earnings of a prostitute. Does the state wish to address the court?
Thank you, Your Honor. We do. First, the state has Jennifer Harper here. She was a victim of one of those cases. She was known as a sister. The state would request that she address the court last. I do additionally have a victim impact statement from her describing the injury she brought with her this morning. Didn't get it back to the Department of Parole and Probation in time. Basically, what we're going to ask for is $200 for her counseling, as she's mentioned, and then we're going to ask for an additional $500. Because most of Jennifer's items that she had, that she lived on, were with the defendant when he was arrested, she doesn't have receipts or anything to show that. I mean, she's actually claiming losses of more than $20,000 in regard to a relation with the defendant, but I explained to her the $200 for the counseling and then $500 just to pay for some of the clothes and accessories that she lost as a result of her relationship with him, a work relationship with him. So that's what we're requesting, and I gave that. I don't have a copy for Mr. Paris. She's going to turn that into the Department of Parole and Probation after sentencing, and we would like to be heard. In reviewing Parole and Probation's report, Judge, it seems as though one of the reasons why they're recommending probation is because this is the defendant's first felony conviction. But the state submits that the department loses sight of two important things. One is that the defendant had 2 other felony cases, battery domestic violence case and another pandering case, that were dismissed during the prosecution of this case. And 2, a lot of times with pandering or sexual abuse cases, the defendants don't have a criminal history. And that's certainly not a reason to say, hey, they don't have a record, so let's go ahead and give them probation because they deserve a chance. The state's going to request something that may be viewed by some as unconventional, certainly I'm sure by Mr. Gilmore, but we're requesting a 19 to 48 on count 1, and we're also requesting a 12 to 30 on count 2, and we're asking that those run consecutive. We feel that's an appropriate sentence for a number of reasons. The facts and circumstances of this case certainly warrant it. The victim, Lakeisha Jordan, was 14 years old at the time of this case. She was just a child. And she was pregnant. The defendant denied having sexual intercourse with her, and yet after that baby was born, DNA was done, and sure enough, it comes back as the defendant's baby. So we have a 24-year-old man having sexual intercourse with a 14-year-old little girl. He's not just a pimp, Judge. He's a sex offender. He preyed on a 14-year-old girl, had sexual intercourse with her, and now has fathered a child. The second reason is he accepts absolutely no responsibility whatsoever. He denies being a pimp, which is a coincidence then that the night he's arrested, he's in a hotel room with 2 females, both of whom have multiple arrests for soliciting prostitution and loitering for the purpose of prostitution. The victim in this case was also a victim in the battery domestic violence case that he had that was eventually dismissed. And another female that he had contact with also has arrests for soliciting prostitution. So just a coincidence then that he keeps being found with all these women who are prostitutes, and yet he denies being their pimp. The defendant in his statement to Parole and Probation says that the state of Nevada was being crafty, and that's why he's in the situation that he's in. He takes no responsibility for the impact he has had on the women that he's encountered in his life, those prostitutes, these women that he's turned into prostitutes, or at least encouraged them to prostitute, not to mention the 14-year-old juvenile that he impregnated. Judge, the most important thing to pimps is getting out of jail because that's where they make their money. He's been in custody for 397 days, and rightfully so. There's a reason that he's been in jail. We're asking that he stay in. He preyed on this 14-year-old little girl and had intercourse with her. But what does he tell you is his main concern? Getting out so he can get on with his music career. That's what's important to this defendant, not fathering or supporting the child that he just had with this 14-year-old. All of those things together, Judge, warrant a 19 to 48 and a 12 to 30 consecutive. We think The probation recommendation by the division is wholly inappropriate in this case, and we're going to submit it on that.
You want to say anything, Mr. Gilmore?
First, I would like to say for what she failed to mention was Ms. Lakeisha Jordan lied about her age with false identification, which she admits in the interview that she said she was 19. Not only did she lie about her age with false identification, and she admitted that, there's corroborative statements along with Mrs. Harper and Mrs. Morton also saying that she said that she was 19. So I judged her on her consciousness to even allow her to even come in the same environment. It must have been something I said or must have something that I've done to make her assume that she couldn't be around me and say that she was 14. So that's why she had to lie about her age. What she also failed to bring up was the case with the domestic violence and the other pandering, and these so-called alleged victims in this case are of age, 19, 23, 22. I don't mess with kids. I'm not a sex offender. I don't mess with children. That's number one. As far as the pandering goes, the definition according to the state was to entice a woman to become a prostitute or get into a continuity of it. I didn't either. She said up there, and she said when they asked her, first of all, they had an interview with no parent, no guardian, no lawyer there, so they were able to basically coach the girl all throughout 3 interviews with her, which everything is contrary one to another. And they asked her, they said, well, what did he say to entice you to get into prostitution? He really didn't say anything. And what she also failed to bring up was that Mrs. Jordan has been engaged in prostitution, or at least she professed that she had, since the age of 12 years old. So if she's been prostituting since the age of 12 years old, then she's already an actress. That's what she does. She's a manipulator. She lied to me. And as far as the living of the earnings of prostitution, she professes that she gave the money to Mrs. Harper. Mrs. Harper says that she gave the money to Mrs. Morton. Mrs. Morton says that I wasn't a pimp, and she never gave me any money. So the money never even made it to my hand. You understand? The reason why I pled guilty to this is because since I've been incarcerated, I've been able to see other inmates go to trial and get broke off, lose, and stay in prison for the rest of they all talking this appeal talk, and from me looking in, I don't think it's going to transpire. I don't see it happen. So I just thought this would be the best money to take the deal. They came with this new information as far as this girl being impregnated by me. I profess that I did not have sex with her. They come at the last minute. The dates.
Hey, you had sex with her because the baby's yours.
No.
That's the only way you get a baby with your DNA is you have sexual intercourse. Lesson number 1. You don't get pregnant by looking at somebody. So you need to stop that nonsense right now. You can't get pregnant? I mean, do I have to explain that to you? How you get pregnant?
I understand
Okay.
I understand that I already have a child, but at the same time, even with that, Mrs. Level, all I would say is all that would have been prevented if she would have said her real age.
Okay, that's fine, but don't say that that's not your baby. There's a DNA test.
Well, it was a DNA test that they convicted another man in Chicago that was in prison for 19 years, and it took 19 years to show that something was wrong with the DNA. So they came at the last minute in March.
Did they do a buccal swab of your client?
They did, Your Honor, and we did receive
Okay.
the results from the DNA test. Obviously, we had to wait until the infant was born, or the child was born, before we could conduct any of these tests. I believe the child was born
So it wasn't like
sometime in
that.
January.
You know, probably what you're talking about is something that happened 20 years ago when DNA wasn't as sophisticated, you know, because I see those things on the news. This is not one of them. They got your DNA, they got the girl's DNA, they got the baby who's born.
That's not my argument right now.
What are the statistics that it's his baby? What are the statistics that it's not his baby? 1 in 400 billion?
Something like that, Judge.
Okay, that's more than there are people on the earth. So it's your baby.
Well, Ms. Lovett, this is my child. I'm more than willing to take care of it.
Okay.
I took care of my child before I
I'll
was
go
incarcerated.
I'll
I
go
got a
for it.
1-year-old daughter.
Yeah,
And
I
what
appreciate
I'm saying is, if she would not have lied about her age,
Okay.
she did not have a confidence of a 4, I would not sit up there and
A
allow
what?
a confidence of a 4. You understand?
Oh, boy, you're just really helping yourself. If I was you, I'd stop and let Mr. Paris, because trust me, he does a lot better than you.
But I have
The
had
continence of a whore, the
I
mother
think-
of his child,
I think
the
Mr.
continence of a
Gilmore
whore.
is trying to...
his anger because she stood up there and called me a sex offender, and this girl lied about her age. She didn't bring that up, and everybody like the continence of the whore.
I think Mr. Gilmore is trying to convey to the court that the
He sees I
victim,
don't like it, but he continues to say it.
the victim in this particular case, this was not her first rodeo. She had a very hard life well in advance of meeting Mr. Gilmore. We're not arguing that things did not get more difficult for her after she encountered Mr. Gilmore and they had whatever level of interaction that they did. However, again, this girl did admit in her various statements to the police that she had been working on this, essentially had been homeless and had been working as a prostitute since approximately the age of 12. So she did have a certain level of experience in these particular areas. The recommendation in this case did take into account all of the factors that the state had referenced in its argument. Mr. Gilmore did have 2 other cases, but both of those cases were dismissed. Preliminary hearings were scheduled, and witnesses either did not show, or actually I believe on 2 of the 2 cases that I'm thinking of, witnesses failed to show on both, for whatever reason, and those cases were dismissed. And the state has evidently made it has not made it a priority to grand jury either of those cases. So holding those cases against Mr. Gilmore would be inappropriate. Obviously, there is no basis for those cases, or else the state would have proceeded on them much more vigorously than they have, at least up until this point in time. So if we look at the PSI on page 3, it does show that other than this incident, he had no prior felony, gross misdemeanor, or misdemeanor convictions, no prior incarcerations, no prior probation or parole terms. And in fact, at the bottom of the page 3, it states that this is the only case for which he has actually been arrested. Other cases, again, have been dismissed by the state on its own volition. However, this is his first substantive interaction with the criminal court system. Again, parole and probation did take that into account. They took into account the victims in this case. They took into account all the evidence when they crafted their recommendation. I'll be honest, when I saw the recommendation, I was somewhat surprised, simply because parole and probation, based on my knowledge of their decision matrices, I didn't think they would recommend he receive probation on both counts, with both counts running concurrent with one another. When Mr. Gilmore decided to enter into these Alford negotiations, I had told him what I intended to do at the time of sentencing, is ask that these 2 counts run consecutive to one another, but that this court allow him an opportunity to be placed on probation. We knew he would have in excess of 1 year of credit in the Clark County Detention Center at the time that he was sentenced on this matter. So it's not as if he has been out and has not paid a significant price for his actions regarding these particular individuals. He's been in jail for over almost 400 days now, over 13 months, because of the poor judgment he has used in the past. He knows that. He's taken responsibility for that poor judgment. I realize he did not necessarily come across that way because he is angry and he is frustrated. No one likes to have the allegations that Ms. Clark was saying to him aired in open court, so I can understand where he's coming from. But parole and probation recommended that he get an opportunity at probation because this is his first substantive interaction with the criminal court system. What I'm going to ask that this court do is sentence Mr. Gilmore similar to how the state had recommended. Give him a 48-month maximum with a 19-month minimum on count 1, with a consecutive 32-month maximum, or was it 30-month maximum, I'm uncertain, 12-month minimum on count 2. Run those 2 counts consecutive, but give him an opportunity at probation. Again, he's already done 13 months, over 13 months in the Clark County Detention Center at this point in time. Give him a fixed period of probation not to exceed, a fixed period of probation of 4 years in this case, instead of the 3 recommended here. We will find out very quickly if Mr. Gilmore is being honest when he says his main goal is to get back to his music. The state tried to characterize that as him not taking responsibility for his actions. I don't think that's appropriate. It's more appropriate that Mr. Gilmore wants to get back to his life. He has been in jail for the past over 13 months because of his own stupidity, because of his own mistakes. Obviously, he needed to make amends for those mistakes, which he has, but his goal right now is to get back and try and rebuild the life that he was trying to create for himself prior to interacting with these various individuals and placing himself in this situation. So again, I would ask for a 48-month maximum, 19-month minimum, which is the maximum on count 1, and a 32-month maximum, 12-month minimum on count 2 running consecutive, but give Mr. Gilmore an opportunity at probation to see if he is actually going to do what he promises this court that he will.
You can call your witness.
Thank you. Jennifer Harper?
Okay.
Now, will you please remain standing and raise your right hand? You do solemnly swear the testimony about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. Please be seated. Can you please state your full name, spelling, and last name for the record?
Yes, my name is Jennifer Prima Donna Harper, last name Harper. First, I want to say, Your Honor, I know that this is sentencing, so I feel that he already has accepted responsibility for what he has done because he did accept guilt and plead guilt. And sentencing, this is your time, Your Honor, to judge how much he should be punished for the crimes he did commit. But right now, Judge, all you see is attorneys who don't really know him personally. You see him speaking angrily because of the accusations against him. But I have known him for over 3 years. We started off as co-workers, so I know, I just want to give you a little insight to his character. I know that he was raised in the church. He's from Chicago, I'm from Detroit. I was one of the victims. I was one of his girls. Right.
You were one of his girls.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
Well, like I said, it never went to trial, so I never really got to testify how I felt everything went down. But Philip and I have had a personal relationship before any working relationship came about. And I can't testify honestly here and under oath and say that he forced me into doing the actions that I did. I was a very grown woman, 23 years old when I started doing it. And I've lived in Vegas since I was 19, and I made that decision 5 years after I've lived out here to do it on my own. But I was with him at the time actually on a boyfriend-girlfriend status, and so that might be the reason why he got excited about all the money that I was bringing and wanted to bring other females around. I do remember I was there when...
He got your money?
Yes.
Okay.
I do remember when Lakeisha Jordan came
Why?
around. Why did he get my money? Because I loved him and I wanted to take care of him. And that's pretty much why every girl who does it... And that's the other thing I wanted to say to you, Your Honor. I've spent time in jail, and I've been around other prostitutes, and most prostitutes are broken women who have come from negative backgrounds, who feel like they've already lost everything. They've lost their children to CPS. They have no respect from other family members. So a lot of times the reason why you have a pimp is so that you can try to buy love, feel accepted, and those type of things. And as far as I just want to bring to your attention, I was around when Lakeisha Jordan came around, and she did make all of us believe that she was over 18. She actually had a false identification showing us and proving to us that she was over 18, because I actually personally requested, hey, I want to see your ID, because I don't know how old you are. You seem real young. She showed me an ID that said she was...
I want to see your ID because you seem real young.
Yeah, I mean...
Okay.
But, I mean, people are crafty. She had a fake ID, so... And she was only around us for less than 48 hours. It wasn't like a long-term relationship with her, working relationship or anything like that. So...
Long enough to get pregnant.
Well, obviously. I mean, some of the things I'm still finding out myself at the last minute. But, like, I can personally attest, we got the room at the plaza the night that she came home, and the next day she was arrested. And that was the extent of the time that she was around us. She wasn't around us very long at all. I was only actually with him on that level for about 6 weeks. So that's another thing that I want you to take in consideration with his sentencing. It's not like he's a career pimp or someone who's been pimping for all of his life for 5 years. It was something that he basically just got involved in at the beginning of 2008. So did I. And I'm taking domestic violence counseling now, mental health counseling, and I personally, I'm the victim in this case. So, like I said, right now you heard from attorneys and everything who are just looking through papers, because I committed my first offense 4 years ago, and I was sentenced August 30th, 2005, and I did the same thing he did. I was mad because the victim came and she was speaking negatively, she was lying on me, things I didn't do, and I didn't show any remorse. The state had suggested probation, but I still ended up doing 6 months flat because of my negative attitude at my sentencing, and because I didn't really understand the penal system. Now that I am older and I do have an understanding of the penal system, I feel like it's designed to punish people for their crimes, but also to rehabilitate them from them. I just got discharged with an honorable discharge from probation on May 7th, and I feel like probation does a lot more for people than incarceration, because incarceration you're taken care of, and also it actually makes your other family members suffer more because they have to pay for money for you to call them, put money on your books, write them. But probation forces you to rehabilitate yourself. That's what I did. It took me, I actually got a 5-year sentence, and I got off a year early because I got off this year. Wasn't supposed to get off till 2010. But I had to do 200 hours community service, mental health work, Gamblers Anonymous, parenting class. I also did about 3 months on house arrest after I picked up soliciting charge. But since the February... While on probation. Okay. Since February 23rd last year, when I picked up the soliciting charge, it really made me change. And I have completed probation successfully. And that's why I feel like, in this case, if you look at the crime, it's not a major crime like he killed somebody or anything like that. They're trying to say, you know, it is a negative thing getting a 14-year-old pregnant, but it was under the pretense that she was of age. But as far as what he's done, it's not that bad of a crime, and I feel like having probation where you have a curfew and all these stipulations, pay restitution back to me, will actually change him. But if he just sits in jail more and more, how do you know that's actually going to change him? And that's why I feel it's your job as a judge to give the judgment that's actually not just going to punish him, but rehabilitate him. And like the defense attorney said, he already has been punished with over a year of jail. And like I said, some person who just...
You've gone way beyond what a victim impact statement is.
I'm sorry.
Into telling me what my job is.
I'm not trying to tell you what your job is.
Anything else you want to tell me about how this has impacted you?
Yes, like I said, right now I'm going through domestic violence and mental health counseling.
And you seem like you're doing real well.
Yes,
Congratulations.
I feel like the counseling has helped, it's changed, and also the things that I had to go through with probation has changed me. And well, I would say it took a year to straighten out my life, because by the beginning of this year, I was to the point where I didn't have a desire to do that anymore. I'm in a stable job, in a stable living situation, and that's why I can personally attest to probation really changing you and helping you stabilize your life, because that's what it's for. And that's what I want as a victim, because he does have another child that he hasn't seen that's a year old. I just found out today about this one, but that's what has been my goal and my focus is my daughter. And you can't do nothing for your kids when you're in prison. Nothing.
Thank you very much for your statement.
Thank you.
Step down. Got it? Okay, and how much restitution were you requesting total?
$700, Judge.
In accordance with the law of the state of Nevada, this court does now sentence you as follows: initially $25 administrative assessment, $150 DNA fee. I'm going to order that you submit to genetic marker testing. At this time, as to count 1, the court's going to sentence you to 18 to 48 months. Nevada Department of Corrections is to count 2, 12 to 32 months to run consecutive to count 1. He has 397 days credit for time served. We're going to impose $700 in restitution.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I have one more matter on page 17.